Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Items of the Week with myself, Lori Williamson, here from my home library slash office, and my colleague, as always, Sandra Ryerson from 3D. Hi, Sandra.
Hello, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Nice choice in shirt today. We totally did not plan this for anybody out there wondering. We're not that coordinated yet, but maybe we'll be next week. I don't know. But anyway, it's good to see you. So our topic this week are Minnesota companies and innovation and kind of their responses to events in the past and what they're doing now. So we are going to start with one of the big ones, 3M. So
Yeah,
yeah, so
I love the
here we see some stuff about 3M.
I love the story of how 3M got started, because the picture of the rock
I
on the
know.
side, that's anorthosite. I'm probably saying that wrong. Someone can correct me.
Oh, goodness.
But 3M started as a mining venture, and then that didn't pan out. So they had to figure out what else they could do or go belly up, and they turned to making sandpaper.
I know. I look at that rock and I think about all the rocks that I have admired on the North Shore. It never would have occurred to me to put them to use in anything like this. Um, but yeah, sandpaper and abrasives. I love the pamphlet in the middle, the scratchless sandpaper for kitchen utensils. We have the 3M corporate records in the library, which is fantastic. But some of my favorite parts of it are these advertisements about how they talk about how great their sandpaper is and all the different uses of sandpaper. There's another one. It's like you can use the sandpaper to clean golf clubs or shine pots. And anyway, it's fabulous. And then the picture on the right here of the huge, huge pieces of sandpaper. I think that's from the manufacturing in the 70s.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a whole lot of sandpaper.
whole lot of sandpaper. And the 3M logo was named one of the top logos for corporations in the country. That big red 3M. So
Can't miss it. You
yeah,
see it on all their products, right?
everything. Yeah,
Including their museum.
yeah. Yeah, this is the Lake County Historical Society's birthplace of 3M Museum in Two Harbors, where that rock, very close to where that rock was found.
Yeah, we've got museums in every county of the state of Minnesota. So when we're all back up and running, make sure to go check out your local museum.
Yeah, yeah. In addition to ours. So this is some more 3M products. The one on the left, the 3M Adhesives in Industry. I love this. This is an advertising piece right after World War II. They were able to, as a company, really contribute to the war effort in World War II. And a lot of their later products came from that.
Yeah, and of course, adhesives, we know them well in terms of Scotch tape and Post-it notes. These actually were inspired by our last episode where we talked about home offices, because what desk is complete without Post-it notes and Scotch tape?
I know, and both of those disappear from my house all the time because my children hijacks them. The better the tape, the more they take it. So,
Hmm.
so this is when 3M started getting a little, well, not wacky exactly, but they were just, they were growing so much and they were so successful in so many different endeavors. They were trying to just branch out and try new products, such as the board game on the left.
Yeah, Acquire. It's a very nice game. That's part of the bookshelf board games. There's actually a short piece in Minnesota history that I wrote on the bookshelf board game series. So you can check that out. It's online on our website.
Yep. Yeah, that's another thing. When all the fine people at home are looking for something to do, Minnesota history, past articles are available online. You can find it very easily on our website, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, the board game, and then
Yeah.
the Decorette brand ribbon. Sandra, do you know why they got
Yeah.
the ribbon game?
I'm not sure, but 3M was always innovating. I mean, from the very beginning, right, when they were forced into innovating,
Mhm.
that's kind of always been their game.
Mhm.
So
Well, and
it makes a lot of sense that they.
it seems a lot of their products grew out of, you know what I mean? They tried one thing, got really good at it, and it was like, okay, we can adapt this or expand this. But that's kind of how they got into different things. But that's why the board games and the ribbon. I'm sure that there's a through line there. But yeah, but I love watching them try different things and seeing what works.
Yeah, it's great. And
Yeah,
sometimes, divisions get sold off so that
yeah,
they can make room for new products. And
yeah.
I mean, this is a whole other division, right? The medical stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, they use their expertise in, first aid tape. So it's like you've got the tape business going. It's like, well, we can make first aid tape and then we can make masks and all that stuff. So it's really, it's fascinating. As I noted here, the mask on the right is not in our collection yet, but it's the one everybody's talking about in the news. And it's the one that 3M is ramping up production of now. We're hoping to get one eventually when it's all over. We don't need it today, anybody, but fullness of time. Right, Sandra?
Yeah, when people are done using them, and of course, we could get one directly from 3M, and that could be great. But often objects are even more valuable when they have multiple levels of story. So if someone actually used one during the pandemic and saves it for us, and it's in good enough condition, consider submitting it later.
And it's been in quarantine for a while. Yeah. Okay, so from 3M, we go to one of our other big corporations. This is Medtronic. What would you like to say about this, Sandra?
I can't see it yet.
Oh, good. So we've got a pacemaker here.
My connection issues persist.
Well, anyway, we've got the image of the pacemaker here, the big external one. And I think that was, what, 1957, is that right? And then we've got,
that sounds.
I think so. And then on the right here, we've got a picture of the inventor, Earl Bakken, holding the pacemaker along with his COO of the company, Medtronic. And they, again, were a great innovating company who really made their big breakthrough with this piece. And they have a museum that was started by Earl Bakken their focus used to be on electricity in life, but they've kind of changed recently in inspiring a passion for innovation. So they're still interested in medical industry and the history of that and of electricity in life, but they're evolving to be more about the idea of innovation and all of its facets and kind of history of science. Sandra, are you totally frozen? Oh, you're back. Can you see anything?
The slides aren't advancing for me anymore. I'm still looking at the pacemaker.
Oh no. We're looking at your favorite now.
Oh, the iron lung?
Yeah. Good guess.
I knew. I don't even have to see it.
Yeah. You do know this piece quite well.
Yeah, the iron lung. Yeah, I love the iron lung from the Sister Canning Institute, and that one came to mind, of course, because this is a machine that breathes for you. It was used during the polio epidemic, and so now we're facing another epidemic. But the ventilators we're using now are probably significantly smaller than this, and this is a junior-sized iron lung.
It's really something to encounter in person because it's so amazing to think that somebody had to spend a huge amount of time and sometimes most of their lives in there. It's pretty wild. And we kind of bring this up to make the parallels with today because Medtronic is working to increase their output of ventilators, so it's very related. So this is from another Minnesota company full of innovation and important creations, and this is Honeywell, and it's a temperature controller regulator, and I think that this one was installed in the James J. Hill Library. Is that right, Sandra?
Yeah, that's right. So this is one of the earliest thermostats that we have from Honeywell. Honeywell became a Minnesota company through a merger in the 1920s. I believe it was 1927. Mm-hmm. And the company had made thermostats long before the move to Minnesota, but this one in particular was in the James J. Hill Library in downtown St. Paul.
Very cool. And these are other Honeywell-related materials, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you see some identification cards on one side there. That's from an employee who was working for Honeywell on military projects during World War II. So these all date to 1943. And you can see the various, you see dog tags as well as an ID badge with a photo. So that's a pretty fun little collection. And then it's sitting right next to an image of planes getting moved by tanks. And this is actually 1951, so after the war. But Honeywell was a leader in technology. The company grew throughout the Great Depression, which is kind of unheard of. And so they became a leader in tech before the war even began. And that's why the US military went to them.
Yeah.
So those contracts lasted a long time.
It is really interesting about how a lot of these companies had their big growth, and kind of became really well known through World War II and the work there, and how they continued to build on it afterwards, and how it's coming in as very helpful and useful today.
Yeah, there's no shortage of innovation that we're all benefiting from now. And here you have some very different time periods. I've got a gas mask that dates back to World War One. We've got several of those in the collection. And in insider baseball here, whenever we open the cabinet of where these gas masks are stored, we have to walk away for a bit and let it breathe because the rubber is off gassing. And so it really stinks.
Rubber's kind of the worst. I mean, I know that it's important and useful in a lot of ways, but it's behaving very badly of late, and we don't.
Yeah, not as bad as plastic, though. Plastic is far worse.
Well, that's right, and these are all relatively new technologies themselves that we, as collections people as well as conservators, don't really know how to deal with entirely yet, just because they're relatively new.
Yeah, we had a lot of recent meetings actually about mid-century plastics because they're degrading. And so we're trying to document them before they disappear on us because there's no way for us to stop the chemical reactions that have started.
Yep. Plastics won't last in the form they're in forever, even though the stuff that you're left with will be around for a long time. That's kind of a complicated message you get over sometimes. It's like plastics have a long life, but not in the form that you think. So what's the other picture here?
So another respirator. So this is a hospital respirator. Looks more similar to that iron lung. This is at the General Hospital in Minneapolis.
The guy in it looks pretty happy. I wonder.
He does, and I didn't dig far enough to figure out why. So I'm hoping this is like a model situation. But maybe he's just, feeling better.
Yeah, that's the thing. Maybe hopefully that's the case. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so I basically did a search for respirators and ventilators, and this came up as well. And this might look familiar to anyone who's flown on an airplane, which most folks aren't doing right now. But this came from Republic Airlines, which was a local airline. And this dates between the 60s and the 80s. We don't have an exact date on that, but I don't think they've changed much.
No, I don't think so. They look really familiar. And so this is General Mills items, right?
Yeah. So you've got some cake flour.
Yeah.
And then a fellow moving a whole pallet of flour. And, of course, we're all taking limited treks to the grocery store. And I know I'm involved in a few cooking challenges these days. So it seems like maybe next week we should talk about, food products and shortages and that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, baking has really took off. I can't believe it. Friends of mine that I never thought of as bakers before will spend hours talking about yeast and how they can't find yeast and how they're making yeast out of the air and all kinds of stuff like that. It's really interesting how people seem to focus on food and baking and stuff that takes up time and it helps nourishes their families too, and that's cool. But it's also, I don't know, it seems it's a very interesting development, I think. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on that. And Sandra,
yeah, and didn't General Mills get some kind of a grant?
What was that? Say again?
Didn't General Mills get some kind of a grant recently to do with COVID-19? Or
they actually promised money. Their foundation has committed at least $5 million, I think, to help food security for people who are dealing with concerns about that. I don't know how exactly they plan to distribute it yet. I'm sure you could go to their website, but that's why I wanted to include them as another company who has had a great impact internationally, and is doing something good to help out with the pandemic now. So
yeah,
Okay,
That's
so
great.
I wanted to mention here at the end a couple different things for you guys to continue your investigation of all things historical and interesting on your own. We still have that History at Home page pulled together of different resources from across the institution to look at, play with, use, enjoy, whatever. And that's really available on our homepage, www.mnhs.org. We also have the History is Now COVID-19 Health Crisis project that we are trying to document your stories and what everyone's going through. So if you go to that and take a look and just kind of think about it, we'd appreciate your help. And then we wanted to remind you, if you have any topics you'd like to see us attempt to address, we'd be happy to hear about them. And you can just send an email to collections, it is plural, at mnhs.org. All right.
And that the operative word there is attempt.
Yeah, because sometimes it's always fun where I'm on the reference desk in the library back when we were actually in the building, and people would be very helpful and ask if we have something, and we love to talk to people about whether we do or not. But our collection on Australian rain sticks isn't particularly great, but that's okay. So anyway, but we'd be happy to take suggestions. All right, do you have any parting words, Sandra?
I mean, on that note, we have a lot of access remotely right now, but for my collection in particular, only 20% is published. So we don't have access to full records for the bulk of the collection publicly. So we have to do a little more creative digging for some of the collections than others. But it's been fun to talk about Minnesota businesses.
Yeah, well, and that is one of our favorite things, is to do collective and creative digging, right? Yeah, so we'll give it a try. And also, like I'm sure you're feeling this way, but like I miss the collections. I miss being able to like go and see them and look stuff up and like check things and whatever. But we'll get through it.
It's kind of the coolest part of the job, and we're missing it.
I know. Like I miss my book cards anyway. Okay, well, it was good to see you and talk to you as always. It was a joy.
You as well.
Yes, and thank you so much for everything, and we'll talk again soon. Best to everybody out there.
Yes.
Take care of yourselves and your family and loved ones. Thanks.